it's not just that we spend time planning. We spend time talking about every bird that flies by. And then we realize, oh, shoot, we should probably move along. Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Hey, welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. I'm glad you're here. Kyle, congratulations. You recently received a grant from the CAF, Challenge Athletes Foundation. I want to start with that today. How in the world does that make you feel?
It's really awesome, first of all, because it is $2,500 that I get to spend on sporting equipment. Okay, that's pretty sweet, the money, but also just the confidence that CAF sees me as an athlete that they want to support.
Yeah.
I think that is the best thing about grants is it just encourages us all to continue in our athletic endeavors.
Keep going. Yeah, for sure. So you've talked about it before, but you've got that big off-road trip coming up. You're doing a month or so on some back trails in Bemidji, Minnesota, or wherever you're going. How's the planning coming?
Planning is going well. My mom's cousin lives like 10 miles from the route, and he owns a piece of property where they have like a campground down right next to the river. And so we're going to spend a whole day there. Like, we're going to take a rest day once a week about. And that will be one of our rest days at my mom's cousin's place, cousin Mike, and in Idaho. You know, we're starting to dig into specific things that we're going to be in specific days, you know. And so as we get closer, we'll hone in on more of those things.
Dude, speaking of this adventure, I just found out yesterday at work that somebody in our company is leaving the company because she is setting out to walk the entire PCT, Pacific Crest Trail.
Wow. Does that go from like Washington to like Southern California or something like that?
It's Canada and Mexico.
Yeah.
It's like the entire, not entire, but it stretches along the North American continent. It's like 2,650 miles, 2,700 miles or so.
Yeah. That's amazing.
3 continents, or not continents, 3 countries. I forget how many states and how many different parks and, peaks and all these. Wow. On average, 5 months to do this.
And so she's doing it all at once? Because I know sometimes people do it like, a month at a time or whatever.
Pieces of it? No, she's doing the entire thing.
Wow. Oh, my God.
And while I was standing there reading this kind of announcement and farewell for her, somebody else in the location I work at was talking to him. He's like, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Good luck." And he's talking like he's a hiker, experienced hiker.
Yeah, right.
And so I started asking him questions. Turns out he's done the PCT twice.
Oh.
Years ago, younger version of him, college, and have you done it? And he's like, yeah, actually I did. And I'm like, oh, what piece of it? He's like, oh, I did the whole thing. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Yeah. Let's talk about this, because I need a hiking buddy.
Yeah.
So, anyway, lots of crazy adventure out there, and I agree with you. When somebody else is willing to put some money your way, it encourages you to do what you can. Absolutely. And speaking of the grant and Challenge Athletes Foundation, this actually leads into this week's What Say You? We recently got tagged on Facebook in a similar announcement as to one that you just shared, Kyle. Mary Good Gatch is the listener who posted on Facebook that she too received a Challenged Athletes Foundation grant this year. And I think what's cool about this one, part of the reason why we chose to highlight Mary's comment, is because she learned about the CIF grant from an episode you and I recorded years ago.
Yeah.
Episode number 23, she writes, I learned about the CIF from a Two Disabled Dudes podcast. Episode 23. So I decided to apply last year, and I won. I plan to use the grant to purchase a recumbent trikes. And she went on to share a little bit more, but that just kind of made me feel good, right? I had nothing to do with the grant, nothing to do with their application, but to me it just affirms that what we're doing here on the podcast, gotta be some good in the world for some people, you know, getting comments like how it encourages them or introduce them to a new thing. How cool is that?
Yeah, and we're just talking with each other and making fun of each other, but if somebody can find some value in that, holy cow, that's pretty cool.
So congratulations to Mary. We look forward to seeing some pictures at least. I'm not 100% where she lives, but maybe we'll see her out on the bike trail someday.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo your congratulations. I know of 4 other people just in the ataxia community who received CIF grants, and so I'm looking forward to seeing Mary and all of them out there on the bike trail.
Having that money, too, or the grant is pressure, right? Now you gotta get out there and get pedaling. Okay, so let's get into our question for today that is for our consideration between us and our listeners. And we were dialoguing a little bit before we hit record, and we recognize that distractions can seriously mess us up, whether it's because we live with the FA or because we're trying to do too much at once in our day job or at the gym or with our finances. You know, there's 100 different ways that distractions can derail life. Of course, listeners know that movement or mobility with FA requires a ton of focus and some intentionality, as it does with many movement disorders, right? We're not the only ones. But if we dig in a little more, those distractions aren't just tied to disability or rare disease. Like, there's got to be 100 different ways distractions impair or maybe destroy life. So, Kyle, I want to talk for a little bit about how impactful, I guess, in a bad way, distractions can be.
You talk about the distraction just simply of standing up. Somebody who has FA, I stand at the sink to do my dishes, and if my concentration drifts away from doing dishes or standing up to just whatever, something that happened during the day, like I can easily find myself on the ground, right?
Yeah. Oh,
so,
totally.
That's kind of where it starts. But I also think of, we were talking about texting and driving, and I was saying that I used to reserve my time in the car to hold a phone in my hand while I'm driving and make my phone calls, and I don't do that anymore unless I have a hands-free device. Yeah. But that's one of those cases where distractions can lead to not so good outcomes.
And when you think about it, the texting and driving idea or concept or practice, that's bad for everybody. It doesn't matter how healthy or disabled or sick or strong or weak you are. Like, it's just bad for everybody that does it.
Yeah.
Hearing you talk about falling over, I think of the gym. Lately, I've been warming up on a Stairmaster. For 20 minutes, I'll just sit there and walk. Typically that's when I'll listen to a book or maybe do a review of our episodes or whatever. So I tend to multitask in that regard, right? Have something in my ear. But what I realized is it's really not that bad. I can do fine on the Stairmaster because there are the handrails and I can be fine until I start looking around.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really easy to do at either other people or the TVs or, there's 100 different things going on in the gym. And let's face it, sometimes watching other people is entertaining. Sometimes it's just, ooh, look at that person. It's like, oh, what's your name? There's some of that. And I realized that when I start to take my eye off the ball, that's when I either misstep or I kind of trip over my own feet, even on that Stairmaster.
Sean, that is a perfect metaphor for like everything in life, right? If we take our eye off the ball, that's when we tend to misstep. In your column that you wrote recently, you were talking about the partitions that you put in the things in your life to keep them compartmentalized so you can focus on one thing at a time and really put as much into that as you can. I think our listeners might know this from listening to us so much, but you're probably way better at that than I am. But I think that's what makes us a good team.
Yeah.
But anyway, I do recognize that is a valuable thing.
Yeah, speaking of us, I'll just put us on blast for a minute. Our listeners probably know Sundays we reserve a chunk of time to work on the podcast and do recordings like this. And earlier this year, we realized that we're easily distracted, and sometimes we'll get on the phone together or Zoom. And 60 or 90 minutes will go by before we hit record, which, okay, is fine. We're planning, discussing, so on.
Yeah.
But then when we really think about it, we actually talked about 14 or 18 different things that don't correlate or that don't work in alignment. So it's not just that we spend time planning. We spend time talking about every bird that flies by. And then we realize, oh, shoot, we should probably move along. Yeah. So one thing we've done just fairly recently is come up with this shared document that we can both access at the same time. And it's a running to-do list. And we've sort of had to, for our listeners' sake, we've had to commit to each other that we're going to work off this list every Sunday. Because like Kyle says, we know that if we don't have kind of a map every Sunday, then we're going to be all over the place, and our listeners will never get a complete episode.
Or a complete thought.
Right. And, speaking of, I'll further put this on blast. The other day, I had to close all my browsers, right? Had to start all over and open things up that I normally just keep open. And I couldn't remember exactly where we had this to-do list saved. And I actually found another to-do list that we started like 3 years ago.
Did you find things that were undone on that list?
Oh yeah. Of course, some of those things we decided not to do, but it made me laugh. So I'm like, okay, so we've recognized the need for this before, but we also weren't great at executing this tool.
Yeah.
But I will say I'm pretty proud of us. So far in season 7, we're probably more than halfway done. And this list has probably been the most significant tool that we've had.
Yeah, and it's to the point where we're like relying on it. Like we start every meeting with, all right, let's look at the list, see what we have to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's even funny because Kyle and I will have conversations and Kyle might spit out an idea and I'll ask, did you put it on the list? Put it on the list. That way we can give it some focused time when that time comes.
Right.
That kind of goes back to time blocking, which we talked about a long time ago.
Yeah.
Sitting here just rambling, I was telling a friend of mine at work a few weeks ago, suggesting a podcast. They were talking about different podcasts they listened to, and I had recommended Smartless. You've listened?
Yeah, for sure.
Hilarious. Like, if you haven't heard of Smartless, folks, you've got to check it out. If you're a podcast listener, even not routinely, but just every now and then you get an hour to kill, you're on the train or on a road trip. If you're a fan of Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and Sean
Hayes,
thank you. Those three, they're the best of friends, apparently, and together, the three of them host this podcast, and every episode, it's an interview with a different celebrity of sorts or significant player in their field, whether it's business or Hollywood or whatever it may be. And dude, it's hilarious, as you know, Kyle. But if I go back to the gym concept, I've learned that I can't listen to them while lifting weights. I could listen to them while I'm on the recumbent trike or bike or the Stairmaster because I'm hanging on. Those are okay. But man, when I start doing free weights and I've got them in my ear, I've had way too many moments of laughter and weakness that I realized I should probably push pause for now.
Yeah, you don't want to take a 25-pound to the dome,
Yeah, or the foot. And it's embarrassing either way. Like, I don't even want to accidentally drop it and hit nothing. Because then everybody's looking at me like, well, what's wrong with you?
Maybe we should take the weights away from that guy.
Yeah, exactly. So, some people, Kyle, I think, might listen to this and say, well, there's a place for multitasking. And although I might agree, it really depends on what it is we're talking about. So, I am a little curious, when people think, multitask, save time, get more done, is there truth to that? And when is that safe, and when is it actually slowing us down?
It feels like it should be the answer, right? How do you get more things done? Well, just do more things at once. It's so tempting. And logically, it seems like it should be that way, right? But I think we both know it, and part of the point of this episode is that is not true because your attention gets pulled in so many directions that everything on your list becomes a distraction from the other thing.
Yeah. And I think at that point, the whole list is unfinished.
Yeah.
You might get a little bit done in 8 different areas, but not one thing is complete. Not one thing is finished or at a point where you're proud of it.
When I get to that point where I'm getting pulled in 8 different directions, and then I pull myself together and I'm like, all right, I'm doing 2 things today, and that's it. And I realize how I feel the next day in the morning. I'm like, oh, sweet. I have 2 things done. I'll get 2 more done today. I think that when you pull it together and take a pause and realize that this is going to be the answer, then that's when things start coming together.
I believe we've talked about it before, but that's really the power of the concept behind time blocking, right?
Yeah.
So that you can commit that hour or that week or whatever it is to that priority. And you're more likely going to complete that priority, get it to a point where it's moving in the right direction before you can move on.
When the weight of getting all 8 of those things is off your shoulders, when you finally make that decision to be like, you know what, I'm going to focus on one thing and forget everything. I feel like the weight is part of what makes that situation unproductive, right? Of for just sure. Being pulled.
How often, whether it's you or I or other people, friends, whatever, I feel like it happens all the time. I've done it. I feel like I have so much to do or to worry about that I end up just sitting in the corner staring at the wall.
Oh my god!
It's like, oh, there's so much. I don't even know where to begin. And whether, we're talking about a self-help kind of thing or a self-improvement guru or shoot, I think we've talked about Celeste Headley, and one of my favorite TEDx talks is hers. She talks about just pick one area.
Yep.
Just find one thing and commit to improvement there. In fact, we talked about it with setting goals, right? Instead of setting 20, just set 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And if you focus and chip away at 1 or 2 or, a smaller amount, it's going to be exponentially better in the long run than trying to chip away at several and not getting anywhere with any of them.
Everyone knows what it feels like to just focus on 1 or 2 things. What do you think it is that causes us to feel like we need to get all 8 things done by the end of the day?
One thing that comes to mind for me is the way we compare ourselves to other people and other things. I can't help but think that because maybe a friend or somebody we know is accomplished and they're doing more and getting a lot done and being productive, that it just automatically puts the pressure on us to get to their level, which can be a good thing, but also could breed some unhealthy thought processes.
And it's good to realize that that person feels totally overwhelmed as well.
Yeah.
And if we could all just agree that, like, we need to be reasonable to ourselves or something.
This is probably a prime example of somewhat of a distraction, but when I run into somebody that I haven't seen in a minute, I'm sure we all do it, right? Like, oh, how are you doing? What's your response, Kyle? You run into somebody at Starbucks. Oh, hey, how you been?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Yeah. What if we actually said, man, you know what? I am overwhelmed and I've got a lot going on, but I'm good. Like, why don't we be a little more honest?
Yeah.
People ask in text, and I'll do it in text without even thinking about it. People, hey, how you been? I've been tired and busy, but I'm doing well. Like, right. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but yeah. I'm also not just trying to deliver a line of fluff. Like, oh, I'm good. Things are asking.
I asked my mailman how he was doing the other day, and he's like, dude, this job sucks. I have 3 more hours. Like, yeah, exactly. And it took me by surprise. I have 3 more hours to get through all this stuff, and then I just have to do it again tomorrow.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah. I wonder how much of that is mindset and how much of that is just honest. The job is tedious.
Exactly.
Speaking of, I forget the town, but it was on the news or maybe the newspaper. There's some little town up here in Northern California where the postman delivery person, whatever the proper name is, they retired after like 30 years or 25 years of the same route. And the entire community came out to celebrate this guy.
Wow.
Because he's been their mailman for 20 years or 30 or, whatever it was, a significant amount. And he knew people by name, and he was always friendly with the kids and high-fiving, and just, he loved the job. And it was obvious. So then I wonder, why? One mailman hates it, and another one loved it for 30 years,
Yeah.
So with that in mind, Kyle, actually, I have a challenge for you. Maybe we can bring it up either in the next episode or the next time when you and I are on. What about committing for 1 week an honest response when somebody asks, how you doing?
All right. Yeah, I like it.
Now, when I say honest, it doesn't have to be 100% forthcoming. You don't have to explain every little hardship, but maybe a different approach. Hey, it's been a long day, or it's been rough. I gotta know what that means, and maybe we'll figure that out as we go, but that's our challenge for the week.
All right, that sounds good. So how does that relate to not getting distracted?
What are you talking about? Well, that's a good question, because it does seem like a stretch, but in my head, I'm thinking that helps us stay on track. And although there's some value in compartmentalizing, I also think that when we recognize the value of keeping everything in life front and center, it might actually help us move forward a bit. So instead of being stressed out at home and then going out for lunch and pretending to be all better and life is good, perhaps recognizing that there's some underlying stress or underlying pressure or whatever, maybe that helps us deal with it more consciously and sooner. Instead of putting it off for days and weeks and hours, it actually, maybe we'll get more done in a more concise period of time, because perhaps we're recognizing what needs to be done and what needs our attention.
Yeah.
I don't know, I feel like that might be a stretch, so maybe on the replay, this whole piece gets cut. I have no idea. So, Kyle, just being honest, it might be a stretch, but I think we might be onto something. It might be a little squirrely and a little kind of coloring outside the lines right now, but I think there might be some stuff here. So ultimately, the homework, I'll even say it for the listener. Let's see if owning our place in life, no matter what issue we're talking about or where we're at or what conversation we're having, if there's a tendency to reduce the, oh, I'm fine response with, here's what's going on, and, without airing all of your dirty laundry, I'm not saying you need to go through the list, but I wonder if in that realm, not compartmentalizing might actually help us figure things out a lot sooner. So, do that. And for the sake of not sounding like I'm a hot mess, let's move on to some thank you notes. As we all know, expressing gratitude is just a good thing to do. So, Kyle, what's your thank you note today?
I was riding my trike on the bike trail the other day, and there's a spot where the trail crosses the road, and cars are going pretty darn fast at it. And I usually stop and wait for a car till I make eye contact with the driver and they let me through. But as I was approaching, a driver saw me, he waved, he stopped. The other driver coming the other direction also stopped and waved, and I was able to go through without stopping. It seems like a little thing, but it was really nice, and I remembered a couple days later, right? So thank you to random driver near the bike trail.
Nice. It's always nice when other people are mindful of your own safety.
Yeah.
I'm saying thank you to Ross, Just for Less, the store. Okay. I know it's nothing significant, but I think I shared in a last episode recently, I spilled coffee right all over the keyboard.
Yeah.
And of course that means it got on my desk and it got on the little table desk runner and the coffee stained, and for weeks I've been smelling my coffee because it's stained. And so last week, finally, I'm like, why don't I just go get a new one? And I automatically thought Ross,
Really?
Yeah, I think, when I think I need a new bowl or kitchen utensil or, some home good like that, I think Ross or Marshalls or TJ Maxx. I don't think of, sure, Target has some fun stuff and maybe IKEA, but I don't need, Scandinavian Designs table runner for $300. Right. I just need whatever. So I went in and I haven't been in a long time because we talked last year, right? And I'm cutting out. I don't need to spend money on a new candle or a new frame or a new statue. So I went in for the first time in a long time, and I found one that I love, and it was $6.99, so $7, and today, I'm not smelling coffee, nor am I looking at a big old coffee stain. So
wow. So was it? Because if you buy one from the Apple Store, it's like $70 or something, right?
Well, I'm talking just Apple doesn't sell them. I'm talking just the table runner.
The
cloth, the decorative tablecloth of it, essentially, but it's for the desk.
Yep. Yeah.
If you're talking keyboard. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I was lost there.
$105.
Oh, yeah, that's a little more than $7.
Now, when you say you were lost, is that another way of saying you were distracted?
Yeah.
I don't think you were listening to me. Anyway, here we are. Distractions 101.
By the way, that was a really interesting story.
All right, let's wrap it up. Thank you for a decent conversation today, Kyle. Thank you, listeners, for hanging out with us again. We always enjoy knowing that people like you listen, so thank you for tuning in. Please share the show with a friend if you're enjoying it. Be sure to subscribe, give us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening right this minute. We look forward to chatting with you soon. Until next time, keep living with urgency.
Thank you for listening. Wait! Before we let you go, we wanted to let you know about Disability Book Week, which takes place from April 23rd to 29th. It's a time in which individuals all over the world are invited to become more inclusive with what they read. To participate, simply read a book that either features a main character with a disability or a book that's written by an author with a disability. Post about the book you're reading and use the hashtag DisabilityBookWeek on social media to join the movement. And ask your local library to set up a display of featured books. Need ideas for what to read? Find a master list of recommended books on disabilitybookweek.org. By participating in Disability Book Week, individuals of any age and ability can gain new perspectives and understanding, all while enjoying a great story. Okay, cue the outro. Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to donate.
Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app.